Tonight, we're going to hear from candidates who are seeking positions on the Pasco School Board and the Pasco City Council. The races that we choose to feature in a primary forum are the ones with 3 or more candidates. Unfortunately, in our school board races, only 2 of the 3 candidates vying for position 3 are here tonight. The 3rd position 3 candidate, Debbie Maxwell, has withdrawn her candidacy, and she let us know that, but she will still be on the ballot. She didn't withdraw by the deadline. In the position 5 race, only 1 of the 3 candidates who are on the ballot is here tonight, and that is Mr. Peterson. I'm going to read this so I get it all straight. Amy Phillips had intended to be here, but sent an email on yesterday saying that an unexpected family obligations had come up, and so she would not be here. The 3rd candidate who is on the ballot, Marlando Sparks, never responded to our invitation, our repeated invitations. And it's my understanding that he also withdrew, but not in time. So he will be on your ballot also. So if you're confused by who's up here, that's why. I'm sorry to say that it's a long-standing policy of these forums that if only 1 candidate is present, they may make a statement on their own behalf, but they cannot participate in the question and answer portion of the forum. Mr. Peterson was very gracious about accepting this policy, and I hope you, the voters, will find a future opportunity to ask him questions. In the city council races, the good news is, and I hope, all 5 of the candidates running for Council Member District 5 position, which is a 2-year term, are here, or said they would be. On the other hand, out of the 6 people listed on the ballot for the District 4 council member position, only 2 of them have chosen to participate. One candidate told us fairly early on that he wouldn't be here as he had family obligation. Another responded 5 days ago that he would not be attending. 2 more never responded to our repeated emails or voicemails. So we're sorry, and then there are 2 going to be here. We're sorry that those who are not attending are missing the opportunity to let you, the voters, get to know them. And we're very, very appreciative of the candidates who are here tonight. I'm sorry that that all took so long, but we do need to provide an explanation when candidates who are on the ballot are not here to participate. So, moving on, I would now like to introduce Mike Gonzalez, news anchor for KVUE TV and a member of the Tri-City Latino Coalition, who will be our moderator. Mike moderated some of our forums last year during the general election, did a great job, and we are really glad to have his help again. Mike.
Thanks, Kay, and let me make sure this is on silent. And thanks for everybody for showing up. I am Mike Gonzalez from Cap KVUE, the ABC affiliate in town. So I'll give one shameless plug. You can watch us at 5, 6:30, and 11, and that's all I'll say about that. But again, thanks for coming. Thank you, Dave Zabel, who's the city manager for Pasco, for showing up. Good to have his support. Legal Women Voters and Kay and the whole gang, just amazing how they put this together. So I want to recognize them. Before we get going, the Latino Coalition, I also see members of the Consejo Latino here. So thank you for all the support to help put this together. So let's get going. This is an important forum in a vibrant city that with issues that are real and important. So let me give you some instructions before we get going. Each candidate may make a 1.5-minute opening statement. We will then move to a question-answer period with a 1.5-minute time limit on responses. All candidates in a particular race will answer the same question, alternating who goes first. We have prepared questions, but we're also taking written questions from the audience. If you want to participate, cards for questions will be given to the audience. Members of the group will hold up their hand, so if you want to submit a question, make sure it's legible, because I can't always decipher what it is, so it makes it really difficult. So if you can write it, try not to write it in cursive, and that makes it a little bit easier if you can just write it in regular type. And due to time limits, we will not be having closing statements. Candidates, I would point out to our timer. You see the stop sign right there. She's going to hold up that sign when you have 15 seconds left to speak. Now, you don't have to stop in mid-sentence or anything like that, but we ask you to finish your thought, but don't continue once that thought is complete. So we're going to begin by introducing the candidate who is here tonight running for Pasco School Board District position number 5, Jeff Peterson. And as Kay explained the situation, he's going to make a statement. He's got 5 minutes to do that, so we appreciate you agreeing to that, because I know folks want to hear from you. So Mr. Peterson, go ahead.
Okay. All right, thank you for having me. It's good to be here again. A little bit of background on myself and why I'm running for school board. I'm a native for Washington. I grew up over in Vancouver, Portland area. If you know where that's at, I spent 20, 25 years over there before joining the Air Force. Spent 6 years back east working on airplanes, and spent some time in Idaho, Florida, Texas, been all around the country. Been here in the Tri-Cities about 10 years. We did that after we got out of the Air Force. It happened to be the recession. This is where we were hired, and so here we are. We love it. It's a fantastic place for our kids, and that's why I really want to run for the school board, is because I believe in the success of our students, and it really is the success of our students. With my background, I have multiple master's degrees in everything from operations, safety. I have an MBA in project management, which is what I currently do. As well as organizational management, which is a very important topic on streamlining an organization. The school board, as you know, oversees the Pasco School District, and Pasco School District has a larger budget than the city of Pasco itself. So we need to have some of that streamlining there. We need to have the efficiency, which is, if you look on the cards, which I have on the back table, and you're welcome to them, there's 3 main points that I want to point out on my candidacy. First of all is fiscal responsibility. Our budget, as I stated, is a little over $250 million. That's a huge chunk of change, and that's provided for us by the taxpayers. And so we have a responsibility to use that wisely. And so we need to do that. The second point goes along with that and is increased district efficiency. I like to tell people that government doesn't even know how to spell efficiency. And anybody that's worked in government, as I've worked in government for a long time, knows that. However, there's always efficiencies that can be gained. Whether it's people doing duplicate work or anything like that, there's ways that we can increase the efficiency of what we do, as well as make sure that we are spending the money wisely. And that's what it comes down to. Make sure that we have the right resources to the right students, the right kids at the right time. And that's the third point. Special needs need special students, or special resources. And that doesn't just include the autism program, the special ed program. That includes multiple programs such as the HICAP program, the AP programs, vocational programs. All of those need to have the right resources. Myself, I have 5 kids, 4 of which are currently in the school district. My youngest isn't quite ready to go to school. Well, he's ready, but he's not old enough yet. We'd like him to go to school, it'd be great. But we have 4 kids in the school system, and 3 of them have special needs, various programs, from social skills to, I have one in the autism program, to my daughter who's working in the HICAP programs. So it's very important that we need to get those resources to the right students. And it's a constant battle to get those to the right students. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a lot more efficient. I know there's a lot of red tape that we have to fight, and that's something that we can streamline and make more efficient. Is if a student needs the resources to be successful, we have an obligation as a school board, as the school district, to get those resources as much as possible to the right students. In my experience, and I've been all over the country, as I mentioned, students can be just as successful as a mainstream student as long as they have the right resources. Now, we also have a focus on, okay, once you're in the school district, what do you do afterwards? So there's currently a a national push for higher education, be it college education, be it vocational training, technical training, whatever it is. That is also a high priority, and we need to ensure that our students have that priority and also have the opportunity to do that, as well as military. Like I said, I spent 6 years in the Air Force, loved every minute of it. I constantly think about it. And it's a good training ground for life, for one, but it also gives you a nice skill. And I believe everybody should have some sort of skill that they should learn more than just book training. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important. So that's my 30-second nutshell. Couple of questions that I keep getting answered since I can't answer questions from you, and I understand the policy, and maybe next time it'll be different, but it is what it is. So a couple of issues that I keep getting hit with. One is I'm constantly asked, let's get rid of the unions. Okay, everybody has a different opinion on that. We can't do that. I mean, it's just not an option. But we can partner with the unions a lot better than we currently do. Let's work with them. Let's get them involved. I believe in open transparency negotiations as much as possible and all of that. However, we still need to partner with them at the end of the day. And we need to be able to do that. And thank you for having me. That's the end of my time.
All right, Mr. Peterson, thanks so much for that statement. Next, we're going to turn to the candidates running for Pasco School Board Director position number 3, Steve Christensen to my right, your left, and Brian Griffith to my left, your right. For simplicity's sake, the candidates will be addressed to begin with by the order in which they filed to run for this office. So we're going to start with Mr. Christensen. Your opening statement, sir.
Well, good evening, and thank you for hosting this event, League of Women Voters, and thank you for attending, and those who are in the larger audience. I hope this is informative. Thank you for letting us go first and to get this behind us. I am Steve Christensen. I am the incumbent in this race. I am currently on the school board. This is my first term that I am currently finishing. I'm seeking a second term, and I've said before, this will be my last term. I do not intend to run again. I do believe that term limits are a good thing, and that new blood, new ideas is a good thing. We've been in Pasco for about 15 years. All of my kids have gone through the Pasco school system. I don't currently have any kids in the school district. The last one graduated in 2014, so I'm getting to be a little more senior in age, which I think is a good thing. I know a lot of people who are older who are very concerned about taxes, and so I think representation from the older community is good as well. In my work, I am an engineer. I'm a pretty analytical guy, so I do like evaluating things. In our district, we've done a lot of good things, which I think our board has been a big part of in making that happen. So I am looking forward to serving a second term, and look forward to this evening, and would appreciate your support. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Mr. Griffith.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you again, as Steve mentioned, to the League of Women Voters for hosting these events. I've been coming for a few years, and I've really enjoyed them every year. I think it's a great way for citizens to engage with potential elected officials, and so I applaud that. I have lived here, as of last week, 10 years here in Pasco, and all 10 years that I've lived in the Tri-Cities have been here in Pasco. I call Pasco home, and I'm very proud to be from Pasco. I've chosen to run for the school board because education has been a fundamental part of my life for all of my life. I was raised by a college English professor and a college English instructor, so all of my papers were very well proofread before they were turned in. But I was also taught how important public education can be, and how it can really lift people from situations that they may not otherwise be able to bring themselves out of. I've went through public high school. I went to a public college. I finished my master's degree at a public university. Public schools have the power to transform lives, and the school boards have the power to make sure that that can happen in the communities where we are. They can make that change be available for students, or they can stand in the way. I think we need some change here in Pasco right now, and that is why I have elected to run, and I would appreciate as much support as possible. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. And again, these questions were made up in advance, so we're going to start with question number one. Mr. Christensen, we're going to start with you. This is a two-part question, but I will say it's multifaceted, so you're going to have to really pay attention. First of all, did you go to the community forums that the district hosted concerning the new bond proposal, and did you listen to what the citizens had to say? Also, how can the school board work with the district to make sure that the citizens fully understand how the bond works, what it will cover, and how it will benefit students, families, and the city?
So, yes, I did attend the community forums. I didn't attend all of I think there was 4 that were held in different locations. I went to one that was held on the one at McLaughlin. And I think the input, there was lots of questions asked, and we've reviewed the input as a board. All that information was made available to us. Now, the challenge with bonds, the challenge with this kind of information, there's lots of different ideas. Unfortunately, we don't get every voice represented at these community forums or even in these surveys that we do. So that's a challenge. And yes, we try and listen. Now, part of that equation too is there's information that doesn't come out in these community forums that we have to look at and consider as well. And the part on how do we inform the public, that is critical. I think that was part of the challenge we faced in our last bond, is getting the information out in a manner that people could use that they could understand it. That comes largely from the district. Now, the district doesn't get involved in picking or promoting bonds or voters for bonds, but they do get involved in getting that information out. So I think that's a critical role that we have to do better as a district.
Thank you very much. Mr. Griffith.
So I have attended several of the community meetings, also some of the community builder meetings, most recently where almost kind of the final presentation that the consultant that had been engaged presented to the board and the community builder group. And I have to say that on multiple occasions, it did not feel like there was an open and a receptive board, that they were entirely honed in on the feedback that they were receiving, and that sometimes it felt like the consultant was maybe getting a little more time at the microphone. And I think that's a disconnect that needs to be worked on. It needs to be addressed. When a board can engage powerfully with the community that they represent, then I think we're going to have the best outcomes possible, and the community is going to understand those outcomes. I spent a lot of time talking to neighbors and parents and teachers over the summer, and time again, the theme that I heard is, I don't know how to be engaged. No, people aren't sharing with me what I can do. And I think that responsibility lays, with the board at the governance level, and then with the administration at the strategic and implementation level. I think there's a lot of work that can be done to continue to engage the community and find new and unique ways to do that.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 2. Mr. Griffith, we'll start with you. Here it is. What response would you give if and when test scores in the Pasco School District turn out to be lower than they were hoped for?
Well, my understanding is that Pasco School District actually has some of the best test scores that are out there. I think, one thing that would be important to me is to draw the distinction between the board of directors as a governing body who sets long-term strategic goals, and then the administration and the faculty who are on the ground implementing those goals. I think test scores are probably a little in the weeds for a school board member. They should be creating long-term strategic goals that the administration can implement, and then let the professionals, the folks who have the PhDs in organizational development, curriculum development, let them use that knowledge to improve test scores if they happen to be lower, and to improve our school systems as a whole.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen.
So that's one of the things as a board that we have tried to get information on is regular reports on how our students are performing, and not, and in particular, how are they performing with relation to their peers in other districts, similar districts across the state. This is critical because it informs the direction and the policy that we set that guides our students. Now, most recently, we have spent a lot of money for new curriculum, and that came largely at the request of the teachers. Now, hopefully this implementation goes well. All reports are that it's going smoothly now. We've got new curriculum coming in this year. Of course, the standards have changed, so that's been part of the reason that this implementation has been delayed to this point. But I think as a board, we have to be aware of what our students are doing and how they're performing. I will say, in our district, we have some great dedicated people who are working hard to make sure that our students are succeeding. And we, as a board, have to be able to get them the resources that they need to be able to continue that progress. So I think I want to know how they're performing. I want to know the things that we can do to make it better for our students, because at the end of the day, that is key, is that our students are getting educated.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 3. This comes from our crowd. Mr. Christensen, we'll start with you. An important issue here. The Pasco School District bond failed the last attempt. How would you solve the overcrowding issue if a second attempt at this bond measure does not pass once again?
Well, you ask a loaded question. We only have a minute and a half. Okay, so let me just tell you, we have got some relief from legislation this year. As you're probably aware, if you've been following school district funding, the levy rate for our district is going to change. That is a huge thing. It will go down from $4.50 to no more than $1.50, and hopefully less. We're very conscious of what the taxpayers can bear. What that will allow us to do is put more money into a bond. I don't think anybody who's been involved in schools knows that we are woefully behind in building, but that's been largely a function or a factor of our bond ability, bond limits. So we have got to get the right bond, and now we'll have more opportunity to do that, to float a bigger bond, to build more buildings. And then, as I said at the beginning, it is incumbent upon us to get out and educate the community. We've got some community members who are engaged, who want to get out and inform people of what's going on, of how this bond will affect them, and both from their tax standpoint and from a student capacity standpoint. But I think it's critical that we get the right information into the hands of the voters if we're going to be successful.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith.
Well, I think first and foremost, the passage of the next bond is critical to the success and the future growth of the Pasco School District. It has to happen. I think there are also some other solutions that the district could explore, both with the union, with the community, with business leaders, considering maybe perhaps models that are used in other parts of the country, year-round school. There are ways that can be balanced in such a way that the pressure on the existing facilities are alleviated a little bit by kind of staging groups that go through as more facilities are opened. There's probably the age-old debate of which grades belong in which school, elementary and middle and junior, high school. And I think those offer some opportunities to seek feedback, see what the community response is about that feedback, and use that to potentially alleviate some of the stressors or strains that are on the current physical plant that is the Pasco School District if the bond were not to pass.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 4. This also from our audience. Mr. Griffith, we'll start with you. Do you support the elimination of Common Core or not? Please explain.
I'm going to admit a little bit of ignorance here in that I am not fully aware of what Common Core is. I've not had somebody explain it to me in a way that was not laden with a lot of probably personal baggage that they front-loaded into the description. I think that the Pasco School District has some really excellent folks working in the curriculum department, and I would defer to their recommendation. I have a master's degree in fine arts management. I don't have a master's degree in educational curriculum development, so I would trust that Pasco School District staff would be able to make the best decision for the students.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Christensen.
I would have to agree with Mr. Griffith that we have some excellent staff. I think that do a great job in helping us sift through what curriculum works. As far as Common Core goes, that is, it depends on where you're getting your information. So my assessment of Common Core is, I like the idea of having a core curriculum that is uniform somewhat across the country. I'm not in favor of it being implemented and directed by government, much like our codes and standards that we use in engineering and building industry. There can be private or independent organizations, I guess they might be quasi-government organizations, but that develop a core and then a local jurisdiction can choose to adopt it or not. I would prefer that we stay at the state level and choose our curriculum at the state level, if you will, or not curriculum, but our core standards at the state level, which is where we're tested and where it matters when it comes to graduation. I think a lot of the scare that comes from Common Core comes with some of the data and the government oversight and even government overreach when it comes to Common Core. And those are the things that concern me. I'm not necessarily concerned about a common standard, although I do think we need to keep it at a state level at the highest.
Thank you. Move on to question number 5. This also comes from our audience. They've had some good ones that they've submitted. Mr. Christensen, will you commit to enforcing Washington State current bathroom policies, which allows students to use the bathroom of their choice?
So this is a challenge, and I think this is a discussion that we as a community have to have. My personal preference on it is that people use the bathroom of their birth gender unless they are just, and I don't even know how you would test their full commitment to changing gender, but I think a simple solution to me is you use the bathroom of your birth gender. Now, again, I think this is not a decision that I'm going to make or that any one person would make. I think this is something that we as a community have to determine what our collective values are and what are we going to do about this. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but I'm not sure how else to answer that. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Griffith.
You know, I think one of the school board's key functions is to adhere to state law and state policy. I certainly think that they have the opportunity to disagree with that, and citizens, of course, have the opportunity to disagree with government at every level. But if elected to the school board, I would take adhering to Washington state law very seriously. That is the law today. I do believe that school districts need to provide safe spaces for all students to use the restroom. It's kind of a basic function. It's something that everybody needs to do. And I think that districts can find ways to accommodate all opinions on this issue. It certainly stokes the fire behind the argument for single-use restrooms, which would benefit probably just about everybody. But I also think as a hot-button social issue, it's a little bit of a distraction from what the school district needs to be working on. They need to be providing quality education, and they need to be providing safe spaces for all students.
All right, thank you very much. We move on to the final question. Question number 6, Mr. Griffith, we'll start with you. This also from the audience. How do you plan to raise test scores in the east side school districts to match the scores on the west side?
You know, first I would challenge that question because I don't know if the test scores are lower on the east side of Pasco than they are on the west side. I think there's a lot of assumption there. I think all of our schools need to be measured, and we need to make sure that all of our students, regardless of where they happen to live, north, south, east, or west, have access to quality education. That's the fundamental duty of the school district, is to provide quality education. If there were disparities in scores, then I would expect that the administration would diligently work to address those issues. But I think the assumption that any geographic part of Pasco has different test scores is not a correct one.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen.
So research shows that there's two things that will impact a student's education. One is their poverty level. Well, I shouldn't say there's more than two things, but one is the level of poverty, and the other is English language learning, and that's a challenge in our district. And predominantly, you can see as you go across the city that the poverty is not the same level of poverty. So one of the things that we have done as a board is work to provide early learning opportunities for those who are not, those who qualify, and it's predominantly those who grow up in poverty situations. So that's one of the things that we have done. I think that's going to be a key thing going forward. Fortunately, we have some good administrators who work really hard to bring those students in. They work with the students, they work with the families, they work with the parents, trying to get these students prepared and making sure that they stay engaged as they go through school. And I think the other key is we have, as a community, we have to work with families. We have to promote families, because ultimately that's where it starts. It starts with the parents in the home. And if we can get them engaged, then I think we will see test scores not only in some of our more poverty schools, but across the district will go up.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, and that's going to conclude this forum. Steve Christensen and Brian Griffith, thank you. Great job, gentlemen. All right, we're going to turn our attention now to the race for City of Pasco Council District Number 4. While there will be 6 candidates that are going to be listed on the ballot, only 2 of them have chosen to be with us tonight. They are Pete Serrano to my right, your left, and no, excuse me. Well, this was wrong on this side. We've got Abel Campos and Pete Serrano. I won't go with the script. You know, so there I go. Get away from a teleprompter, and boy, what happens? Again, for simplicity's sakes, we're going to address the candidates in the order that they filed. And if you guys have any questions, we've been really getting some great ones. So feel free to find one of the gals from the League of Women Voters and submit those questions, because you guys have been really throwing some tough questions at these guys. So first thing we're going to do is make an opening statement. Mr. Campos, you're up first.
Sure, thank you so much. I want to first thank everybody for being here, for the League of Women just setting this up, and just really giving us opportunity to be here. My name is Abel Campos. I've been telling everybody I was born here, raised here, and I've lived my life to serve Pasco. And I've been doing that. And I'm very proud of the city that we are. Very proud of the people that we've become. And I believe that we can only get better and continue to do some amazing things as a community. And that's one of the reasons why I'm putting my name in as city council, because I believe in this city, and I believe in the people, and I believe that we can do some amazing things. We do have some issues, but I've been telling people all the time, issues are not problems. Issues are opportunities to get things better. And I'm looking forward to that. I've been able to not only been raised here, but also raise my own family here. I have 3 children. My wife, they're here. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys. But I'm just so excited to be able to just go in and just really help many of the things that we need to do in this city, primarily figuring out the economic growth, going with recreational activities, unity, and just continue to do some amazing things in the city. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it for the support. I welcome you to go to the back table and grab my card to learn more about me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Serrano.
Thank you, Abel, for your comments. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting us tonight. And thank you for all in attendance, both here and those in the interworld. I'm happy to be here. I am a Pasco resident of 2 years. I most recently moved from my home, Sacramento area, where I grew up, because, quite frankly, I noticed that some of the issues included planning, disparate communities, communities that couldn't have citizen involvement. And I see some of these issues at the forefront of Pasco as we continue to grow. I'm a little concerned that some of our residents feel like there's a disconnect between city staff or city elected officials and their needs. I would like to bridge that gap. I would like to listen, which I've conducted listening sessions. I've hosted events. I've been knocking on doors to hear opinions, to gather information and data. I want to be the opportunity to have the open door between the citizen and the city and make Pasco a home for all. I want us to project a positive future. I don't want some of the things that have happened in the past that let's leave them in the past. So I'm happy to hear your concerns. I'm happy to work with you on your concerns, and I'm happy to help you. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Serrano. We appreciate that. We're going to start with question number one. Mr. Campos, we'll start with you. What do you consider to be the biggest challenge the city of Pasco faces today? And if you're elected, how are you going to address that challenge?
Sure, I think that there's two, but I'll just focus on one. I think that we need to unify our city. I think that there's some things that are just been going on that people have just been considering just to divisions and whatnot. I've been telling people that, the kind of rubs me the wrong way to hear East Pasco and Central Pasco and West Pasco. And I've just been telling everybody, no, we are Pasco. And I believe that if we're going to continue to grow as an amazing city that we already are, then we need to be unified. And we need to get that going. And unity is more than just simply getting along, but it's also working together. And I think that we need to do that. There is some challenges, absolutely, as a city, but we won't be able to hit any of those challenges unless we're doing it together. And so I want to do that. I want to create, whether it's our strategies, our plans, or our focus, our branding, whatever it is, let's do it with unity. Let's make sure we get everybody's input. Let's make sure everybody has a voice. And I think that together we can do some amazing things. So that is my focus. Unity, let's do this. And if we're going to do it, let's do it together.
Thank you. Mr. Serrano.
As I mentioned earlier, I feel like the citizens feel there's a disconnect from the city. First, I think we all need to applaud the city staff. We have some very dedicated individuals, as well as those who are currently elected. We have great people who are trying to work to better Pasco. However, when I talk to people, and I myself feel like there's a disconnect between the information that's there and the perception of lack of information. The city has a Facebook page, the city has a website, they send out mailers, but for whatever reason, we, the citizens, aren't reacting to that. And then when we see a plan move forward, it's like, who pulled the wool over our eyes? Why is this happening? Why was my input not sought? Well, it's been sought. It's been sought on Facebook, and it's been sought through the mailers. But again, for whatever reason, we don't feel like we're getting the information. And I know this because I've received mailers. I've looked at the website. I've looked at the Facebook page. I've informed myself on issues. But again, because I've chosen to move forward, I've informed myself. So somehow, and I haven't really figured the solution, but I'm working towards it, I want to, if elected, find a way to open that door to have the additional communication and that open government sense that the community is missing. And that's my goal, is to leave it open.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. We'll move on to question two. We will start with you. This is from the audience, and we've had several people submit this question. If you are elected, would you support a referendum to allow citizens to vote on allowing marijuana sales within the city limits?
I'm fine with allowing the citizens, so long as a majority elects to vote as they need. We, the city, have a right to vote things that we're concerned about. Now, that doesn't mean the referendum would pass. That doesn't mean that I personally would support it. What I can tell you is I've done research, and I can tell you this. Right now, it's projected in 2017, over the statewide, you're looking at $750 million, $750 million in sales in marijuana. Of that $750 million in sales, you're looking at about, I think, a third of that was going to come in tax revenue. Now, what you see trickle down to the cities is about 10% of this $300 million. So let's say $30 million is going to trickle down to your local governments. That is based on a per capita if you've approved legislation. So let's assume that Pasco at 71,000 and the state at basically 7.2 million were 1% of the state's population. We would see 1% of $30 million back into our budget, $300,000. What does that buy us? Now, if it's all for use of recreational purposes, and that's where the citizens want to go, that's one thing. But for those who are concerned about a fiscal impact, there is a negligible fiscal impact. And anything that we would have to do to enforce it that costs more than $300,000 would be a detrimental impact on the city's budget. So for those of you who are concerned about the fiscal impacts, I would consider that if we were to pass it. But yes, I would allow the citizens to vote on a referendum.
Thank you. Mr. Campos.
Yeah, Pete said it really, really well. I think there is no problem of allowing the citizens to vote. I think that as long as we are communicating well about really what the issues at stake. I think we've seen a little bit with that discussion of the school bond, but also taking it to the city and having the citizens vote. I think we need to really sit down and really talk about what really is the plan, what really is the idea. I think there's this assumption that if we do allow this, then yeah, we're going to get tons of city taxes, but as really Pete articulated really well, it's not going to be that much money anyways. And so I think that if we are going to go to a vote in this referendum or any other referendum, I think that we need to educate ourselves as a city council, but also as citizens as well, and making sure we're well informed so that we don't make these votes really just unnecessary and people just picking just because they feel like it's a good idea.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 3. Mr. Campos, we'll start with you. This also from our audience. It's a pretty long one, so listen closely. You know, sometimes it seems there's two sides to Pasco, an East Pasco and a West Pasco. And here's the question. Do you support city government focusing growth and development on revitalizing Pasco's downtown core and East Pasco while maintaining its existing culture? Or do you support growth and development on the west side of Pasco exclusively? The other part of the question, how will you incorporate affordable housing? What types of affordable housing would you incorporate into the community and where?
Great question. A minute and a half. Let's go ahead and start this. I think you guys really already know my heart. I think we are for all of city to be successful. So to just get all the questions answered really quick, yes, downtown, let's revitalize that. Let's figure that out. Let's really figure out what we want to really do, the branding of it, the style of it, what can we do to do that. Also continue the growth in Road 68, Road 100, that's our district, continue to grow that. But I think the ultimate focus of the city council is not just to pick one side of the town and focus on that while neglecting the other side. I think we need to do it all. I think both sides, whether we're talking about the eastern side of our city or the western side of the city, is ripe for growth. It's ripe for really success. We're talking from anything from economic growth of getting businesses. I really see potential in both sides of the city, and so I'm all for that. I'm all for doing that. I think that as our city continues to grow, we're going to have these issues, the issues of, yes, are we going to have affordable housing? Are we going to be able to have jobs? Are we going to be able to do this? And can we maintain that in both sides of the city? I believe yes, we can. How can we do this? Well, we got to make sure that we have our zonings in place. We got to make sure that everything's fine. I think that we've seen kind of just the rush with Road 68, and that's an whole issue in itself. But I think that we need to really plan and strategize and figure out what can we really do to make sure that whether it's we're building new or recreating or renovating something that's been there, that we're doing it in the right way. And so ultimately, yes, let's make this whole city great, whether it's eastern, western. Let's go ahead and do this and make this an amazing city for everybody to visit.
Thank you very much. Mr. Serrano.
I would never want to exclude a part of the city. So the part of the question that asks whether we would exclusively focus on the west side, the answer is no. The city of Pasco needs to grow together and collectively. If we continue to focus on one portion of the community and say we're going to grow businesses on west side, throw affordable housing in downtown and East Pasco, you're going to find a more divided Pasco. I don't know anyone, I hope I don't know anyone in this room that wants that. I certainly don't want that, and I've not spoken to anyone that intends for that to occur. So that being the case, I would focus on continuing to develop business in downtown Pasco, East Pasco, and allowing, as Abel notably mentioned there, allowing that portion of the community to maintain that cultural piece. That is a cultural staple of the city. I live in West Pasco. There's no culture. We've got a Walmart. We've got stoplights. That's what we are. We've got a couple of farmlands that are now turning into housing. That's what the West Pasco is, and that's fine. And I believe it should continue to develop, but again, not at the peril of East Pasco. And I think that leads us into the need to continually integrate the two portions of the city. I don't know exactly how we do that. I don't have an answer for everything. I have some answers for some things. But I do think the city needs to continually come together. As far as affordable housing, it should be made available throughout the city. West, north, east, south. Affordable housing needs to be available to everyone.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 4. Mr. Serrano, we'll start with you. How would you address poverty and homeless issues in Pasco?
To that note, I think, I know there's some private coalitions, but whether it's churches or other public interest groups that are working diligently to work with the homeless population here. Now, I know that the homeless population here is not as what it is in Sacramento or San Francisco. So, when I think of that, I guess it seems like to me, it's not something, it's somewhat negligible. We do need to care for our homeless. We need to ensure that the services that are provided to those individuals are, again, made notable and available. It's the same thing. Get the information out to the people who need it. And I think, again, as we continue to work with the services that have already been developed and buffer those, whether it's add to their budgets or assisting them, or as a city, drawing support, actually vocally drawing support for these missions, for these groups, and saying, hey, look, we need to bolster these people. We as a city are behind them, not just at ribbon cuttings or at events, but actually behind the wheels, working with these groups and showing the support. That's how we can face the homeless population.
Thank you very much. Mr. Campos.
Sure. I think the thing that we need to first do in tackling this issue is we first need to accept it. And we need to embrace it, and we need to think of solutions. I think that as a city, we need to do a better job of proactive movement instead of reactive. And we can't wait till we see the people and say, like, oh gosh, we have an issue with homelessness. I can tell you right now, we do have an issue with homelessness. I volunteer every single month to an event that the community is more than welcome to come out, and we pass out food, and we pass out clothes, we do it. And there's people that are that are hurting. They don't have jobs. They don't have a place to live. And so I think the first and foremost thing that we got to do is we got to put it right up there and say, you know what, we do have an issue. We got to figure this out before it gets to be a bigger issue. If you're talking to the homeless community, they'll be the first ones to tell you they do not want handouts, but they do want a hand up. They want resources. And they want people to just really come beside them and tell them that they can really achieve a lot of things. And so I think as a city, we need to provide resources, give them some trainings, giving them some resources that they could have and other things. We don't have to just kind of reinvent the wheel, but we could use other nonprofits that are already in our city that are already doing a phenomenal job. We could partner with them. We could tell people about what they're doing and really go hand in hand telling these people that are in an unfortunate situation that there is help. I've talked to them. They're willing to do that, and I think it's our part to do our part.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 5. This is from our audience. Mr. Campos, we'll start with you. If you are elected, how will you ensure that the issues and concern of Pasco's majority population, which is largely Hispanic, will be addressed by the council?
Absolutely. One of kind of my focus that I really want to do and goals, if I should be elected to the city council, is be the ear to this community. I don't want to be a council member that thinks that we have all the answers or we know that all the answers, but that to simply be an ear. There's a lot of people in our city, 71,000 plus, and we want to be able to hear them. And we predominantly know that a lot of them are Hispanic, a lot of them are Spanish speaking. I'm fortunate to understand the language, and I'm fortunate to understand that culture. And I want to be able to listen clearly, understand where we're at, but I also want to be able to bridge the gap. I want to be able to create the atmosphere as a city of just being able to understand that our diversity is not our issue, it is our strength. And so taking that and really growing from it, I think we could do some amazing stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Serrano.
Yeah, I appreciate what Abel had to say there. As a city council member, it's our duty to listen to all citizens within our district and beyond our district. So to the extent that East Pasco may have a larger portion of Hispanic individuals in our particular district, I think it's critical that we conduct listening sessions throughout the city, that we work with other city council members to ensure that the city is well-roundedly represented, not just a silo of District 4 thinks this, District 2 wants this. Let's go butt heads. We need to make sure that we're collaborating as a city council to ensure that all citizens have an equal voice. In addition to that, we also, as a city council, need to ensure that the city members and the city safety forces are well educated in all things cultural as well as linguistically. So I think that's another thing that the city can continually work with our forces to ensure that these individuals feel like the police is a friend, the police are a friend, that they're an arm to the entire community, not just the white community. We want to ensure that the city, again, is all taken care of. And that's what the city council has to do, is ensure that everyone feels welcome.
Thanks so much. We'll move to our sixth and final question. Mr. Serrano, we'll start with you. How would you balance the right of residents versus the rights of business interests?
I think they need to go hand in hand. If you don't have affluent businesses, you don't have residents who are getting supported. If there's nowhere to shop, then where are your people eating? So the businesses need to continually receive our support, and I think in particular, the local homegrown businesses. I know we have a handful of business representatives here that are small businesses. We need to support and earmark these people, let them know, hey, this individual lives here in our community. If this individual's suffering, we're suffering. So to the extent that we can support local businesses, we need to do that. But it's not paramount to bring business in at the expense of our citizens. If they're dangerous or other businesses that have interests that draw away from family, from recreation, that draw away from our schools, that draw away from funds that can be earmarked for positive forces for the city, we need to ensure that we don't host those businesses. We want people to feel welcome. We want, of all, our citizens to feel welcome, but we also need to ensure that we have an adequate economic stability here, and that not everyone's just running out to Kennewick, and not everyone's running out to Richland, and Pasco's the forgotten child. Let's not be that anymore.
Thank you. Mr. Campos.
I believe the same thing. There has to be a cohesiveness, of ability to create a city that is both welcoming to residents wanting to live here, wanting to visit here, but also welcoming to entrepreneurs and businesses that want to. I think we do have an issue with Pasco not being able to really draws too many businesses that want to come in. I know that we have tons of entrepreneurs, and in talking with them, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll tell you that they just don't know of any resources. They don't know of anything that's kind of willing to help them. And I believe that as a city, we got to do that. We have to create a city that is welcoming businesses and entrepreneurs that are already living here to start something. Even something simple as what CBC just started out with, the Food Truck Academy. What a great idea. Let's continue to help this, to stimulate our economy. As our city continues to grow, the reality is we're going to need jobs here. And the ones that will give jobs are the ones that are businesses that are here. And so we need to help that. With the same respect, we need to also honor our residents and make sure that we are bringing businesses that they want, that they like, that could help us out in just creating the city that's amazing. Maybe businesses that are recreational, maybe businesses that will just create this atmosphere that makes the city great. And so I do believe it goes hand in hand, but I believe that we need to do a better job in drawing more businesses to our city.
Thank you both. That concludes this session. Abel Campos, Pete Serrano, thank you, gentlemen. Great job. All right, welcome back. District 5 here in Pasco, a vibrant district, and a lot of attention for this race. Once again, Mike Gonzalez from Cap KVU. I'm the news director out there and evening anchor. So thanks for letting me be a part of this forum. Really appreciate it. The League of Women Voters and everything they've done to help put this together. I'm going to introduce the candidates now for District 5 here in Pasco. They are Rebecca Francic, Joan Larson, Russell Glatt, and David Milne. And as Kay mentioned, Mark Doc McFarland did not make it tonight. And again, for simplicity's sake, the candidates will be addressed to begin in the order in which they filed. So we're going to have an opening statement. Ms. Francic, we'll start with you.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Francic, and I'm asking you to re-elect me to the Pasco City Council. When I run for re-election, you, the taxpayers of Pasco, have an opportunity to evaluate my job performance. When you re-elected me in 2015, I promised to make Pasco a better place to live, work, and play. I have kept those promises. My votes have strategically and efficiently invested your tax dollars. We brought $91 million of industrial development into Pasco last year alone. We secured money for the Lewis Street overpass, held public hearings for the 500 acres being developed at Road 100. We are preparing to open a new fire station on Road 84. We've constructed a new police community facility, all while dropping the crime rate and your city tax rate. I voted to improve opportunities for minority representation on Pasco's council, saving you millions of dollars in potential court costs. Pasco is now named by independent surveys as one of the best cities in which to live, work, and play. This success is not accidental. It is a result of your participation in community surveys and public meetings. We took your comments and we used them to improve and provide the services that you asked for. I have a consistent record of knowledgeable, honest, and effective service. I want to continue representing you. To see the data that I have represented tonight, please check out my website, votefrantic.com, and please remember, vote Frantic.
Thank you, Mrs. Larson.
I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here to speak to you. To begin with, the day I filed, the Tri-City Herald called me on the phone, which I saw on my caller ID, and I didn't want to talk to them. But a few hours later, the reporter came to my door, and she wanted to have a statement as to why I was running. And she talked to me about the fact that my husband had been on the city council, and why was he not running and I was running. And so I thought for a moment, and I said, because we decided that it was my turn. And why is it my turn? Possibly it's just time for me to share the things that I have learned from my husband being on city council, and the fact that I believe that the rights and in liberty of people, and that the city council and should be there to help the city staff to serve but not control the residents of the city of Pasco. I grew up in the northeast part of Los Angeles, which had a very mixed culture of people. And one thing that I learned there was that everybody wanted to be treated equally.
Thank you. Mr. Glatt.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this event tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the residents of Pasco. My name is Russell Glatt. I'm running for City Council District 5. I was raised here in Pasco, and I graduated from Pasco High School in 1983. As an adult, I've chose Pasco as my home. I live here with my wife, Bertha Rhonda Glatt, and our two children, Esteban and Gabriela. The city of Pasco has been good to us, and I've extended from living here in Pasco to investing in Pasco. I have invested in numerous properties here in Pasco and rehabilitated them, and they have been a real plus to our city. My interest in real estate grew to include all the properties of Pasco. I volunteered for our City of Pasco Code Enforcement Board. I was on this board for 3 years, 2.5 years of it. I was the chairperson of it, and this board makes decisions about enforcing property standards. My involvement in this board evolved to advocating for improvements that have benefited our city. I've spoken at meetings that have included community meetings, City Council, Planning Commission, and Code Enforcement. I've also had individual meetings with our city staff. As a result, I have learned how our city operates and have developed a positive relationship with our city staff. I'm a big believer in Pasco, and I believe what separates me from the incumbent is that I'm comfortable standing up and taking a position and advocating for the needs of Pasco. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milne.
Hi there. I want to say thanks for everybody showing up and the Women League of Voters for putting this on. I'm David Milne, and I have 4 kids. I have a beautiful wife that's my rock, and I'm glad that I've been able to live in Pasco for over 20 years. I've been running my own company since I was 21, started here. We've always been here, and I can honestly say I'm not a politician, but I am a small business owner. I believe in Pasco. I'm passionate about doing what I can for Pasco. I go to all the city council meetings to see what goes on, to just be involved. I'm on the Pasco Parks and Rec Board. I also volunteer a lot with Sunrise Rotary. I believe in getting involved. If you want to make a difference in your community, you need to step up, volunteer your weekends. I've also done Leadership Tri-Cities. again, I'm just real passionate about Pasco. I want to be involved. I want to make a difference in my community. And if anything, I'd like to see more of the council members get out, talk to business owners, be instrumental in promoting small business. And I really think that we could unify the city, we could grow the city. I work in East Pasco, but I live in West Pasco, and I try to see all sides. And I just want to say, please vote for Milne. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes opening statements. We'll get to question number 1. Ms. Franczyk, we'll start with you. What do you consider to be the single most crucial issue that is facing Pasco today? And if elected, how will you deal with that issue?
I would tell you that I think one of the most important issues that's facing all cities across the state, including Pasco, is our legislature's willingness to come in and sweep funds out of our pockets that we need to deliver local services. What we have done is we've hired a very good lobbying team. They saved us over $600,000 of lost revenue just this last year alone. And I think that having better tools, which again is something that we're talking to our legislature about. We need better tools for making sure that all of these roads we have, which are brand new, relatively speaking, and will fail at relatively the same time, that we have a funding source which is significant enough that we can take care and maintain those roads.
Thank you. Ms. Larson.
As to what I feel is the most crucial,
I'll read it again. What do you consider to be the single most critical issue facing Pasco today? And if you're elected, how will you deal with that issue?
the single most crucial issue for Pasco. I was out door knocking and met a lady who's had a sign on her door that we needed to pray for our country. And after I talked to her at the door, she was concerned about the federal government. I said, we need to be concerned about the local government. And we need to work at it from both ends. And so we need to involve and be concerned about what's going on in our local communities and as to it relates to our rights and our freedoms and our understanding of what we want as people.
Thank you. Mr. Glatt.
I believe our biggest challenge is the growth here in Pasco. Everybody wants to come and move to Pasco, so that's a unique opportunity. And one of the big issues with that is are we keeping up with that growth? And especially in my district, talking from door to door, is the traffic flow, especially on Road 68. What can we do in the short and long term and to make our traffic flow more efficient? Another thing is I see a lot of apprehension about our growth on the Road 100 area, and the big thing there is there's some apprehension. Is our plans suitable for Road 100, and are we going to have some of the same mistakes that we had on Road 68?
Thank you. Mr. Milne.
I'd say the biggest issue is the perception of Pasco Pasco is always a city of no. I mean, you can't even get an Uber from Tri-City Airport to anywhere in Pasco. It seems like the other cities are more in with the times, using technology, and we're always no. I would ask the people that were on the city council, do they even have the Uber app, the ones that voted it down? But I think other issues is the perception that, we're an older city, and I just think that so much more could be done if we promote businesses. And I know with the Road 100 project, we have a way of making this great to show the other two cities that this is Pasco. We could have great things, whether it be a water park there, a park that's more unified, say with maybe like you would go to Bellevue where you have the low income, the high income, you'd have small shopping areas, but you got good traffic flow in and out. I mean, this Road 100 project, which I'm really for since I live on Road 100, is I think it'd be instrumental in showing the other two cities, hey, come to Pasco, we could make things right. Yeah, 68 had some mistakes, it is bad, but Road 100 could be better. And I know if using the city council, if we all come together and with the city staff, we could make Pasco a lot better place where people would really want to come and spend their money.
Thanks so much. We'll move to question number 2. Ms. Larson, we'll start with you. Are there areas in the current city budget where you would like to see an increase or decrease in spending, and why do you think this change in spending would benefit the city?
You hit on one of the topics that I am interested in. We could cut expenses if we eliminated adding fluoride to the drinking water. This would cut a big expense. The benefits of it are for children, and parents can get tablets for the fluoride at minimal cost or even free. The expense is also the water plant, I understand, has the fluoride has an effect on the equipment there as well. But this would cut a great deal from the budget, and also be able to provide that thing, that necessity for children by the parents.
Thank you. Mr. Glatt. Yes, I can. Are there areas in the current city budget where you would like to see an increase or a decrease in spending, and why do you think this change in spending would benefit the city?
The answer to that is I'd like to see increases in our city budget in regards to, as I said in my first question, into our roads, especially on Road 68, Road 100. For us to continue to grow and expand, it's difficult for us to have bottlenecks where we're caught up in traffic. And if we do this, we will be able to expand and where we keep the quality of life, a good quality of life. The other part that I like to see is in our downtown Pasco area. Even though District 5 is not in downtown Pasco, I've been a big advocate for downtown. And what I like to see there is that we make a commitment to downtown Pasco. Our attention has been focused, and there's other parts of the city. And we need to look at addressing chronic nuisance businesses, and we also need to invest in downtown so we can increase the number of businesses that we have, and we can create where people come to downtown Pasco, spend money, and increase our tax base.
Thank you. Mr. Milne.
I believe the city is being run actually quite well. I do feel, though, that the best way to be able to maintain what we do as a city and not have to cut things is to increase small business. Small business is what gets people jobs, and I think the best way you could do that on a small city level is to really promote small business. And my idea would be to have a small business portal where people could be in Spanish and English, where people could come to the city of Pasco on the website, and it would show them step by step on how to open up a small business. We have a lot of businesses that, shops that could be rented in downtown Pasco and other parts of Pasco. If we make it really easy for somebody to open up their business, show them what they could expect, again, step by step, who they need to contact, what codes, if they have a restaurant, is the codes going to show them that? I mean, really, other cities do this. I feel that Pasco could do this. And if we do this successfully, we would have more money, and with more money, we would be able to expand things, such as I'm passionate about parks. I love running my bike on the park, so I would like to see more in parks. And then in the Road 100 project, I'm enthusiastic for. So I would say that, of course, and also better traffic flow. But I honestly feel promoting small business would be a big way to increase the money and not have to cut city services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Francic.
Well, since I've been working on the city budget for a number of years, I have to tell you, I think that we've got it about right. One always wants a little more than what you can have, but you have to balance how much you're going to charge taxpayers, because nothing is free. So we have two types of budgets in the city. We have one for capital costs, where we're building things that are kind of one-time only, and then you have the maintenance operation costs. Some of the things that I wish that we could increase our budget on is alternative forms of transportation. We have a lot of people that bike, a lot of people that walk, and I think that as our population is changing demographically, age-wise, we've got younger people moving into the job market. A lot of people are telling me they want to bike to work, they don't want to drive, whereas we've been a culture of trucks and farm equipment. We have put a lot more money into our police and fire just recently because that's what we heard from the citizens in the surveys that they wanted. And I am extremely pleased with how many public forums we have that invite the public to participate in deciding how they want the city to be formed. So down at the farmers market, we've had surveys and people down there talking and allowing you to vote for the services and things you want to see in Peanuts Park and on the Lewis Street overpass. Up at Road 100, we had several openings so people could come in and talk about what they wanted to see in the Road 100 area. So I have to say, I think the budget's just about right.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 3. Mr. Glatt, we'll start with you. This is from our audience. What did you personally do in the aftermath of the Antonio Zambrano Montez shooting to give back to the community and unify the community?
All right. Well, first of all, with the Zambrano situation that really divided our community, and some of the things that I did, first of all, was my wife ran for city council 2 years ago. Her name's Bertha Ronda Glatt. I was instrumental in having her run. We both had aspirations of running at that time. I thought it would be better for her, being of Mexican descent. I thought that the city of Pasco needed her more than me at that time. And so I was really instrumental with her campaign and supporting it. Some other things that I've done is at the city of Pasco and city council meetings, I've advocated for an interpreter at our code enforcement meetings. I've advocated for downtown businesses, the mainly Latino businesses is the focus of our downtown mainly. I have a number of other things that I've done is I've advocated that our city boards, our employment, be reflective of our Hispanic community. And I've also reached out to recruit people that fit our demographics so we have more diversity. And I'm also very supportive that we have a diversity board.
Thank you. Mr. Milne.
Yes, the Zambrano shooting was very tragic. Our building is actually right next to the Booth building, and Mr. Antonio Zambrano actually was running in our direction, so we heard it loud and clear. We actually had consequences. Somebody actually did break one of our window and wrote it was only rock, but we actually didn't even turn it into the cops because I felt, well, you know, it's just what it is. We made sure that the protesters, anybody else, was able to use our parking lot. We tried to, again, listen to both sides. I know we talked a lot about with our customers that would come in, ask what happened. When the street was actually closed off, it actually hurt us financially because people couldn't get to our store without making detours. But what I've done personally, besides go to the city council meetings, I've tried to support Vinny's, the little cafe that Mr. Antonio was shot at. I like having lunch there. So that was something I actually started when that happened because I know it affected his business. And other thing is just try to talk to customers, you know, explain things. I've also made a better effort to talk with different police officers, you know, go when they open up the police department. Just basically try to get more involved and try to hear both sides. It's a tough issue, but I think just being involved in the community and talking with people definitely helps.
Thank you. Mrs. Francic.
Well, first of all, the Zambrano shooting was certainly a tragic event, and nobody in Pasco was happy to see that it happened, period, whether it was in our community or anywhere. I was so impressed with the Zambrano family, the way they so politely protested and came down and told City Hall what they felt, but they didn't encourage people to burn businesses to the ground, as we've seen in other communities. They really set a very high tone, and I was so impressed with them, and they kept an open line of communication with our police for the whole duration of the investigation. So I was very impressed with the Zambrano family. I attended all of the forums that came up after the Zambrano shooting, and I just listened in my capacity as a city council member, knowing that this was going to be going to court. You know, I couldn't I listened. We followed the process. We didn't assume there was innocence or guilt on either side. One of our city employees had actually pulled Mr. Zambrano out of a burning building and saved his life just 2 weeks before he was fatally shot. So that kind of brought us to the point where we've reflected on what is it that brought us to that point? How did we have a situation where a citizen actually ended up getting shot? And that has brought us to our police chief, who is now trying to figure out if we can do something with mental health to help some of the people in our community proactively. Mental health is a county function, but what can we do as a city to kind of keep this from happening again?
Thank you, Mrs. Larson.
Basically, I just listened to my husband, and who had been on the city council, and listened to other comments from people and concerns. Yes, it was as my daughter, who lived out of the city in another state at the time, she said, "Mom, it made national news." And it was a very tragedy for us. But as Ms. Franzik pointed out, our community survived very well in not having any of the things that happen in other parts of the country when this kind of thing happens. And I think we just need to be more concerned. And her last point about mental health is important, and that we need to be more concerned about mental health and what is going on.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to question number 4. Mr. Milne, we'll start with you. It is estimated that the population in Pasco may grow by more than 20,000 residents in the next 15 years. What would you recommend to encourage and be prepared for growth management and proactive infrastructure development?
Well, I can say as a small business owner that would really help me a lot, since I sell residential equipment, nails, staples, so I love to hear this news. But all jokes aside, I believe that the best way would be, again, making sure that the city staff is, aware, hey, this is what we have coming on. We don't want to just give all these housing permits, even though that's great for me, but don't want to give all these housing permits and just massively build. We need to make sure that the roads could support it, that we have, again, a long-term plan, and that we have zoning that's capable for these areas. Maybe not have just so much massive housing areas, actually try to have, more commercials and break it up a bit. I would say the best thing we could do is, even though I know the lure of all these housing permits is hard to pass up, maybe taking a step back and saying, maybe we shouldn't put so many houses, because all the people then would be coming down one road, and it takes so many years to get an off-ramp off of I-82 that maybe this isn't the greatest ideas. So that's what I would say, is work with the city, try to have more of a long-term plan with the city staff that's, putting these things together so that as a city we look like we actually have a plan, not just haphazardly go our way. So,
thank you. Mrs. Franzik.
Well, first of all, we don't have the right to stop anybody building houses. If you are zoned correctly and it's your property, you can build on it. So I oftentimes hear citizens say they want to stop growth in Pasco, and I'll tell you, legally with property rights, it's not possible. So what we need to do is we need to be proactive, and we need to be ready for it. We have been the fastest growing city for about 15 years, and I think we've managed it quite well, but a few glitches that we've come up with, you all know about Road 68. That's a result of having 5 acres sold, 10 acres sold, another 5 acres. Road 100 is so important to Pasco's economic future because we are working with a single owner of 500 acres around that interchange. That gives us the right and the opportunity to plan with this individual the road system so that we can get people off that freeway in a much more efficient manner. And then it also gives us a subsequent ability to go ahead and make connectors up into Road 68, which will eventually improve that situation. I think the most important thing to do when you have this much growth happening is to make sure that your zoning is good. that you have businesses in the right place, you have houses in the right place, you have schools in the right place, because it reduces people's commute time, it makes the city more efficient, and it helps to keep it economically viable. The last thing I would say is we have a very aggressive program working on water rights. You cannot build in Pasco unless you bring your water rights with you, and that will continue to be an issue as we grow in size.
Thank you. Mrs. Larson.
Yes, I think the most important thing about that is when you're looking at, you need to plan, you need to look at the future, and you need to look at zoning codes. You need to plan out where you're going to let businesses be, where you're going to let housing be, and what kind of residents are going to be in these areas. You just can't let it go haphazard. As my brother said about Los Angeles, it became an overgrown cow town because it just let things go. And so you need to plan these out and extend what you think the future is going to bring. And that, I think, is the best thing that the city council can do, is make sure the planner works with him and what's going on in the community.
All right, thanks so much. Mr. Glatt.
Would you like to repeat the question?
Yeah, sure thing. It is estimated that the population in Pasco may grow by 20,000 residents in the next 15 years. What would you recommend to encourage and also to be prepared for growth management and proactive infrastructure development?
Okay, first of all, here in Pasco, we have a lot of different resources. Like, we have a state-of-the-art airport, we have really good transportation system with our rail and truck, and we also have water traffic. We really need to focus on attracting manufacturing and light industrial businesses, and we need to continue to collaborate with the Port of Pasco. We can't just expand and build houses. We need to make sure that we have industry to support middle-class jobs here in Pasco. Another thing what I like to see is that we expand our water processing and the amount of area where we can actually expand our zone for food processing plants. This will support our farmers. Agriculture is one of our big industries here in Franklin County, and that will continue to bring more value-added jobs. We also have opportunities with the Port of Pasco along our riverfront, along the Cable Bridge, and in our downtown area. If we do revitalization right, we will be able to actually attract more industry to the Port of Pasco that has a light industrial area and business offices at Osprey Point.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to question number 5. Ms. Francic, we'll start with you. This is from our audience again. And it says, Pasco is about 60% Latino and Hispanic, and also has an immigrant and refugee community as well. And it's also home to the only LGBT bar in the Tri-Cities. Now, if elected, will you support an inclusivity resolution so all that who reside here in Pasco feel welcome and included?
Well, I can't think of any reason not to. I think that Mr. Campos said it very well. It is our diversity that makes us strong. It's our diversity that makes us interesting. If you've ever been to any of the flower shows that they have on the west side when all the fields are in bloom, if you've seen 15 acres of daffodils, you're starting to look for tulips because you get tired of having just everything be the same. So I believe that inclusivity in our community is very important. And what I think is more important is that we set the tone as a city council. We have rules that are not overly prescriptive, but that allow us to bring our different cultures, our different religions, our different customs together so that we can enjoy each other versus finding conflict.
Thank you. Mrs. Larson.
I believe in that diversity makes us more interesting. I believe that we can work together. Having grown up in a very diverse community, we learn to understand each other's culture, and we take from it the good, and we help them understand what the culture is that our community wants. I think that it's just a matter of learning to accept and listen and to understand others and to just be a better person ourselves in making a community that others want to come into and live in.
Thank you, Mr. Glatt. Sure thing. Pasco is about 60% Latino and Hispanic and has an immigrant and refugee community, as well as home to the only LGBT bar in the Tri-Cities. If you're elected, will you support an inclusivity resolution so that all who reside here feel welcome and included?
First of all, I would be interested in looking at that before I made a decision on that. But the city of Pasco, we want to be respectful of all of our citizens here in the city of Pasco. And our city council in the last year has actually addressed the Arlene Flowers thing, and I thought that brought negative attention to our city. And we need to spend our time facing the issues for the city of Pasco. Also, we need to be, I work for the state of Washington, and on my job, on a day-to-day basis, we have a culture of respect towards others. I work with a variety of cultures and multiple backgrounds, and we need that here in Pasco, where we are respectful of one another. If our people are connected and respected, then they will have more pride in the city of Pasco, and we will also have more togetherness and less divisiveness.
Thank you, Mr. Milne.
Well, when I was raised, my dad always told me to make sure that you treat everybody fair and equal. So, I mean, anybody that comes, deals with me, or comes into my place of business, I mean, we treat them with the utmost respect. I mean, I can't see why, as a city council or anything, that you wouldn't treat somebody with respect, kindness. But I'm not against giving special rights to certain groups. We should all be treated fairly. You know, the LGBT community, I respect them. I even have a relative that's that. But again, I don't see any reason why we have to make special rules. But on the other hand, we do need to treat everybody equal, support everybody's religion, support everybody's way, and again, just be open and honest and treat everybody fairly. That's my viewpoint.
Thank you very much. Now, we don't have a closing statement, and I'm going to ask you guys, would you rather make a closing statement instead of question 6, or would you guys rather have a question? If we get a majority, would you guys rather have a question? Okay. I just wanted to give you guys that option. Okay. Yeah, if we have enough time, if you guys don't mind sticking around, we'll have I'll make that executive decision. How about, we're going to have a closing statement. How about that? Let's do it. All right. But I will get this final audience question in, because we've had a lot of good ones, and we appreciate your participation. It has been over 2 decades since the Americans with Disabilities Act was enacted. If elected, what will you do to make sure that all of Pasco is accessible to all of its residents, including making existing buildings compliant? Mrs. Francic, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, we've done a lot with our curb cutting programs. I know that our city has gone through and changed all of our street lights, so they have audio cues, so people who are blind know when they can cross the street. People who are in wheelchairs can cross the street. So we have done everything which is within our purview to make sure that our city is ADA compliant. I know all of our public buildings are ADA compliant. As far as private businesses, all we can do, we can through our looking at apartments. We have an apartment code enforcement who goes out and makes sure that people are within compliance. That falls within our purview, that we can make sure that they're ADA compliant. But personal businesses, that is a state law or a federal law, and so that really isn't within the city's right to go after.
Thank you. Mrs. Larson.
Can I just say ditto?
Sure.
But she's right. It is, much has been done on the curb cutting, and I've seen it myself and wondered what it was, and then realized what it was. And the community has, the city has done what it can, and I guess encouraging businesses to help in this aspect would be on the agenda as well.
Thank you. Mr. Glatt.
Yes, so from my understanding on this issue, there's a lot of requirements that come on this from federal and state requirements. And from my knowledge, City of Pasco has been proactive in complying with those ordinances. I have seen the curbs as we've done road construction, and I would continue as a councilman to support that we make the City of Pasco as accessible as possible for this group.
Thank you, Mr. Milne.
So I agree with the other three comments. I will say I go down to downtown Pasco quite often, whether it's having lunch or I use the post office. I love that post office. You get in and out quickly. So I do use the crosswalks. I will say, though, that the ADA compliant, I do believe that, new buildings definitely should be, but the older buildings, the ones in downtown Pasco, if you made them change, that would be a huge financial cost. You'd drive even more people out. It's not great, but on the other hand, I think that, if you have a business in downtown Pasco, it should be, we want you to stay. We don't want to cause, a $80,000 remodel to make the hallway bigger, to have different bathrooms. It's bad, I definitely agree with that, but I would not be for having to change existing buildings in the downtown part of Pasco to comply with that.
All right, that concludes our question and answer session. We're going to have closing statements, and Mr. Milne, we'll start with you.
Again, I'm just real passionate about Pasco. I love being here. I love wanting to do something that I can. Again, I bring a lot to the table with being conservative, fiscally conservative. I run my own business. I have a budget. I live in a budget. I employ 10 people. And again, I live in West Pasco, but I work in East Pasco, and I try to do everything I can to promote our city. I want people to come to Pasco. I just want to make the city as best it can be, and I know we can come together. And if elected, I'm definitely willing to work with anybody. I don't have any pre-hidden agendas. I just want to do what I can to make the city grow, expand, and be the best city out of the three.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Glatt.
All right, well, I really appreciate this opportunity again to speak to the citizens of Pasco. And I am really excited that if I have this opportunity that we can have City of Pasco continue to grow. And I want to be part of that. And especially, like I said earlier, about bringing business to Pasco. I've always been a strong advocate of Pasco, and I want to continue that we have a positive image, and that that people will continue to think the best of Pasco as well as our citizens. And again, I have served on our Pasco Code Enforcement Board. I've learned a lot about our city and our systems, and I believe it would be a seamless transition for me to be elected as council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Larson.
My family and I have lived in Pasco, or I should say Pasco area, because we were annexed in, probably the first annexation, but for 40 years. My children graduated from Pasco High. We have enjoyed living here. We will probably continue living here. It is a good area to live in. As for service on the city council, my husband has done it for almost 16 years, and I've supported him in that, and I'm just wanting to fill in and continue serving the city of Pasco. One thing that I do know is that when you serve on the city council, if you want to make a major change from some of the major things, you at least have to have 3 other people to go along with you. It's not a one-person deal. You have to win the cooperation and understanding of the other city council members and what they want and what the city really needs.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Francic.
When my husband and I first moved here, I told him I'd stay for 2 years, and that was it. I was out of here. And much to my surprise, I turned out to really like Pasco. When I we raised 7 children here, and then when I got on the city council, we were a population of 24,000, and today we're 71,000. What I like about being on the Pasco City Council is my passion is long-term planning. We've lived very lean in our household, so I know how to use money very efficiently to get the very best benefit. And I've been able to use that knowledge on your behalf on the City Council. So I have also served you at the state level. I've been on the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board, where we've built a lot of roads in this area, and on the Public Works Trust Fund, where we've funded water and sewer projects all throughout the state. So I have a passion for infrastructure. I think that's exactly what's needed at this point in time, because we know that as all of these new people are coming in, our infrastructure has to be in place, it has to be functioning, and it has to be correctly placed. I am so excited about both the Peanuts Park and the Lewis Street Overpass, which we do have money for and are going to be completing, and the Road 100 project. We've got 2 ends of Pasco at the same time, and I just want to really be there and serve you in this capacity as I have for the past several years. So please vote Franczyk.
Thanks so much. I want to thank the candidates once again, Rebecca Franczyk, Joan Larson, Russell Glatt, and David Milne. Can you give them a round of applause? Great job, everybody. Well, that's going to conclude our forum. I want to thank the League of Women Voters once again, also Mike Charbonneau, John Funfar, City of Richland and the staff, and the folks from the City of Pasco staff, and the police department for letting us use this great facility. I'm Mike Gonzalez once again from Cap KVU ABC. Thanks so much for coming. We appreciate it.